No exaggeration here, this is one of the most hype, important, and best written One Punch Man webcomic chapters that I have read in a very long time. The GOAT 1 has dropped another One Punch Man chapter just days before the One Punch Man manga is supposed to return. And I cannot overhype this enough. This chapter is massive for so many reasons because there's such major reveals, like so many theories that have lasted for so long throughout the series' run are either getting ruined or confirmed. Like, this is a massive, massive chapter, guys. And the crazy thing is that Saitama at the end of this chapter seems to be set to face like the strongest opponent that he has to this point. And I love me some hype Saitama fights, but like I will honestly say that that's not even the most important part of this chapter, or the one that I care the most about. I normally go like page by page going over the chapter with you guys and explaining what happens throughout the entirety of it. But to be honest, there's so much that happens in this chapter and like so many thoughts that I have personally about it that I'm just going to talk about some key things that do happen in this chapter and some like really massive implications that I think are coming because of this chapter and like especially the very end of it. So if you've been away from the webcomic for a while and don't remember what's going on, right now we're like in the heat of like the massive android invasion, or the robot invasion, I guess you could say, where there's robots left and right attacking all the heroes, destroying cities, and heavily attacking the Hero Association base. All at the same time, Genos is on his way to go take down Metal Knight because, of course, way back Drive Knight and more recently, he's been kind of driving home to Genos that Metal Knight is like the root of all evil and he is responsible for creating the Mad Cyborg. Now, this definitely gets touched on at the end of this chapter, and honestly, I think we have our answer as to like who the good guys are and who the bad guys are, because there's been a lot of like back and forth of, is Metal Knight the true bad guy? Is Drive Knight the true bad guy? We're gonna cover that in a second. But really this chapter can be broken down into like three main parts, like three main events that are really like occurring during this chapter. The first being what I like to call like the come up, or like the full circle arcs of the S-Class, because we see characters like Tank Top Master have a shining moment. Super Alloy Darkshine definitely has some shining moments in here, like he's just straight up piecing up machine gods left and right. Also easily takes down Raiden even with his battle suit, so that kind of calls back to like at the beginning of this Neo Heroes arc where Raiden challenged Super Alloy Darkshine and it seemed like Raiden might have had like the upper hand on him in terms of strength, but no, apparently it was just all a mental block on Darkshine's side. And now that it seems that he's let go of all the vain reasons for being a hero, and now that he's doing it just because it's what he wants to do, because he just wants to help people, it seems like we're seeing full power Super Alloy Darkshine once again, or maybe even for the first time, because like I said, he's like straight up piecing up machine gods like it's nothing. We also got the reintroduction of Amai Mask and Webby Gaza, because we saw that, you know, a few chapters ago they kind of had their own little moment, and it seems like Amai Mask has also come full circle in his character arc. And I also want to highlight this like really cool moment in the webcomic chapter where Tank Top Master is just like casually talking to Amai Mask in his monster form, and honestly they seem to be talking to each other like more like friends than they ever have. So it's just really cool to see that he's being accepted with open arms by the S-Class heroes without any really second thought. And along with that, like I mentioned earlier, we definitely do get some Saitama action in this chapter. We straight up get 4 serious moves back to back to back, some of them being new.
Boom! 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 Boom!
Like the serious whack-a-mole and the serious spin. And he's using these moves just to destroy massive hordes of robots attacking the Hero Association base. Now, of course, seeing Saitama perform some serious moves is very, very hype and always welcome for me. But this isn't even the most exciting part of the sequence. But also, I do want to give a really quick shout out to an awesome sponsor of this channel, GamerSups. Many of you have probably already heard of GamerSups at this point. GamerSups is an energy supplement that is beloved by the gamer community and the anime and manga community as well. For me personally, it gives me a great caffeine boost without giving me any type of like crash or like overdoing it with the caffeine, and it also gives me some really good mental focus. On top of that, it has 0 sugar, less than 1 carb, so it is keto friendly, and it's less than 1 calorie per serving. It's definitely a much healthier and cheaper option to just buying energy drinks. On top of that, you also get some very like interestingly named but also very delicious flavors. Like if you see right here, we got some guacamole gamer fart 9000, but my favorite, and not for the reasons you guys think, it's because of the flavor, it's Bowberry, I think this one's called. Yeah, Bowberry. What's also very exciting is that they just recently came out with like actual energy drink cans. Now these aren't sugar free, but I will say right now that the sugar does not get wasted in this drink. This is what I'm drinking right now, is the Goof Juice one, and honestly it's pretty damn good. I don't usually drink energy drinks with sugar in them, but like this one I could definitely make an exception for. Check out all the interesting flavors, the anime themed waifu cups, and now the energy drinks that they have on the website while they last. The energy drinks specifically are probably going to sell out pretty quickly. And if you use the link in my description below and also use my code AnimeX at checkout, you'll also get 10% off your order. So get a sweet discount and also help support the channel very much by using my code today. But back to the video. Because as Saitama approaches like the fallen heroes that have been fighting off these robots this entire time until he arrived, Overgrown Rover appears and seems to be pulling Saitama in a certain direction, like wanting him to go somewhere. And at the same time, Black S appears, because we got to remember that he actually joined the fight to protect the Hero Association base. Like, it seemed like he was full power at that point. So I was personally really excited to see what Black S could do to these robots and like showing off in front of the heroes. But it turns out that even he was overwhelmed by some like super powerful force hidden among the robots. Like in his own words, he said that there's one insanely strong opponent hidden among the robots, and if it gave him that much trouble, because I mean, even with like the buff that he got in the manga, or it seems like he got a buff in the manga, like even in the webcomic, he was insanely strong, like enough to take on multiple S-class heroes. For him to have trouble and like look like he straight up just had been defeated, this opponent must be extremely strong, like probably one of the strongest we've seen in the series so far. So unfortunately, we don't get to see who the opponent is in this chapter, but we're likely going to see it in the next one, and I just have all these theories bouncing around in my head on as to who it could be. If you guys remember, like some chapters back, Genos had discovered like the incubated body of Boros. So I don't know if maybe he escaped out of that tube and like Saitama was about to fight like Cyborg Boros or something. Or maybe it's like one of the final Machine God series robots. I'm honestly not exactly sure who this could be. If you guys have some better ideas, let me know in the comments below. But I'm definitely very excited to see how this fight turns out. What I'm honestly the most excited about from this entire chapter though isn't even the Saitama stuff, it's what's going on with Child Emperor and Metal Knight. If you guys remember these past couple chapters, they've been having this kind of like genius face-off, I guess you can say, where it seems like Metal Knight was definitely getting the upper hand on Child Emperor, but you know, Child Emperor seemed to have some more tricks up his sleeve, so there was definitely a lot more to be settled with them. And in this chapter, we see their battle continuing, but we actually get to see Child Emperor unveil his Brave Giant, or like the webcomic version of Brave Giant, and it's like 100 times more massive than the Brave Giant we saw in the manga. It's like big enough to crush entire buildings under its feet. But to counteract this, we see that Dr. Bofoy also pulls out like his most powerful arsenal of robots, the Metal series. And what's really cool is that, you know, Metal Knight is included in this series, but what we get the reveal of is that Metal Knight is actually just a part of like a chess themed arsenal of robots. There's Metal Queen, Metal King, Metal Pawn, Metal Rook. I thought that was very cool, and I'm sure many of you already like immediately jumped to something that's very similar to this, which is the series of transformations that Drive Knight has. Now, Metal Knight series is based off of chess pieces, and Drive Knight series is based off of shogi pieces. But I'm positive that there's no coincidence by one that like he made their series and like, you know, Drive Knight transformations very similar to each other, because there's always been this like back and forth dynamic between Metal Knight and Drive Knight of like, who's the real bad guy? Are either of them even bad guys? Are they both bad guys? Like, always leaving us wondering. Well, I don't think there's any more reason to wonder for Metal Knight anymore, or Dr. Bofoy, because in this chapter we actually get like the full realization and explanation of why he is the way that he is. And it's honestly what I suspected, like that he's not truly evil, he's just very pragmatic, and you know, he does what's necessary for the sake of humanity. He even says himself in this chapter that like the reason he helps the Hero Association is that without him they would get obliterated instantly. But what's also very interesting is that we find out in this chapter that Dr. Bofoy hasn't already gone on like to full-on cyborgification or cyberization, whatever they call it. I don't even know what they call it anymore. But Child Emperor kind of theorized a few chapters ago that Dr. Bofoy had like fully integrated his entire body, including his brain, with an AI that they were developing some years ago, because that was the only way that it was able to be controlled. Like no human intellect can manage that powerful of an AI. But it seems that no, like Dr. Bofoy seemed to have like actually managed to do this using his own brain and his own intellect. And he seems to bring on an interesting point as well, that like the human brain is really the thing that has like true infinite potential, not robots and cyborgification or anything like this, which really does bring this arc full circle because, you know, with this Neo Heroes arc, there's been a lot of like the cyborg stuff, pretty much trying to push away from being human as much as possible. So I think it's kind of ironic that Dr. Bofoy, out of all people, is the one to bring home like the idea full circle that being human and conserving your own like humanity is the true key to infinite potential. Which, I mean, Saitama has been a walking example of this the entire series, but I don't know, I found it very interesting that Dr. Bofoy was the one to like really hammer this idea home to Child Emperor. Now, going back to the AI that was being worked on by Child Emperor and Dr. Bofoy says that he actually ended up completing it. And we also found out something that we probably already suspected, like on the camp of the people that thought that Metal Knight was actually just being framed and wasn't the real bad guy, is that his data was stolen by somebody to create the army of robots that's causing all this destruction. And apparently the Machine God series is an incomplete failure version of what he was trying to create with the AI. Now, circling back to the fact that Dr. Bofoy said that, in a sense, in simple terms, the AI is complete. And I don't know if I'm understanding this wrong or reading this wrong, but from what he's saying, it seems that like that AI does exist and it's still out there, but that even though it is complete, like it's still not going to be as unique and as, you know, have as much potential as a human, because they have a much different ceiling than humans do, which will cause it suffering. But he also points out that that suffering that AI is going to suffer or is currently suffering may cause it to break a ceiling of its own. But before we can get any more explanation on that or like more details, Child Emperor kind of circles back to something that Dr. Bofoy was talking about, where there was some kind of mastermind that was the one that stole his robot data and his combat data and was pulling the strings to everything that's happening right now. He asked Dr. Bofoy if he knows who the culprit is, and what Dr. Bofoy says and like what comes immediately after this is very, very interesting, and where I want to get into some like heavy theory crafting here. All Dr. Bofoy says is that man, he's been after my brain since long ago. And immediately after this, like we don't get an answer to what he says, but we see Genos bursting right through the brave giant robot that's fighting the Metal series. And to end the chapter off, like we get this shocking moment where we see that Genos has straight up like went straight through Dr. Bofoy's heart and is ready to blast him right in the face. I do want to circle back to that like last line that Dr. Bofoy had, because I think like reading between the lines, it's very, very tricky like at who he could be speaking of, because I feel like we do know who it is already. Like we've seen the character before. It's not going to be some like newly introduced character. Now, many of you are probably jumping to Drive Knight. Like, okay, yeah, obviously this means that Drive Knight is the mastermind behind all of this, but no, I don't think that's the case. I honestly think that Drive Knight is actually the AI that Dr. Bofoy and Child Emperor were speaking of in this chapter, like the completed AI, the one that he was saying that was going to suffer because of his own limitations as a cyborg. I think that's something completely separate from the mastermind that's pulling the strings of everything that's been going on here. Now, I know this might seem like a stretch, like I might be reaching here, and I know that it may seem like a very obvious red herring by one, considering like how he kind of structured the paneling here, because he had Dr. Bofoy end off on this little cliffhanger statement, and then immediately after that, he had Genos appear. But genuinely, what I think is that there's a very good possibility that Dr. Kuseno is actually the one that's the true evil one, and the one that was after Dr. Bofoy's brain and his technology. Now, again, I know it sounds crazy because, like, especially the way that Dr. Kuseno kind of like had his final moment with Genos, like it was a very, very heartwarming, a very genuine moment, and like that's kind of like the main thing that's holding me back from like truly believing in this theory, because I feel like one wouldn't really put that much emotional weight in that scene, like just to have him actually be a bad guy, but it would also make sense because it would make the plot twist just like that much sweeter. But like just kind of like thinking about all the scenes that Dr. Kuseno has been in, like prior to this point, like kind of thinking of it through that lens, it does start to make a little bit of sense, because I had this like inkling idea like way back in like the season 2 events when Genos defeated one of those Machine God series robots, and he brought the technology over to Dr. Kuseno to use it to upgrade his body. And Dr. Kuseno, especially in the webcomic, in the manga and in the anime, it's like doesn't sound as nefarious. He sounds more so concerned. He's like, Genos, like, where did you get got this? Where did you find this? But in the webcomic, it just seems much more like dark and just much more almost like he wasn't anticipating Genos to discover that kind of technology because he's familiar with it already. And the reason he would be familiar with it already is because if it was data that he had already stole from Metal Knight, then he was the one that developed that technology for the organization or for the Neo Heroes or whoever's kind of like taking advantage of this type of technology. Now on top of that, you could also point to the very clear and like way too coincidental way that Dr. Kuseno actually met Genos. In hindsight, it might have seemed way too like cookie cutter that after the Mad Cyborg had destroyed Genos' town, like even though Dr. Kuseno was on the Mad Cyborg's tail, like why did he stumble across Genos like just by chance? Like how did he discover him and repair him into being a cyborg? Like there is a possibility that Dr. Kuseno still is alive and he just like faked his own death, which would also make sense, like how the machine gods showed up so quickly and knew exactly where Dr. Kuseno's base was at the moment that Genos and Saitama both visited there. Because originally people thought that, you know, considering Drive Knight is a bad guy here, and he might still be a bad guy, but everyone kind of assumes since Genos spoke with Drive Knight prior to going to Dr. Kuseno's lab, that Drive Knight was the one that tracked him down and sent the machine gods there. But it could have honestly all just been a setup. And what's really interesting here is that since Dr. Kuseno was really interested in analyzing Saitama's body and his strength, maybe he set this whole thing up to like fully analyze Saitama's power, and that might be the robot that, or like the adversary that Saitama is about to fight in the scene that we got prior that, you know, Black S mentioned. There was a super powerful foe compared to the other robots just kind of hidden among them. That might be the way that we're connecting the pieces here. Like Dr. Kuseno invited them over to analyze Saitama's body. He got like his physical analysis done, but he needed some like actual like combat footage or combat data. So to kill two birds with one stone, he set up the machine gods invading his lab to fake his own death and also analyze the strength, like the direct power of Saitama, in order to create this like super strong cyborg or super strong robot that is now attacking the Hero Association base. I know, super harebrained, super crazy theories just like jumbling around here, but I mean, that just goes to show how amazing of a writer that one really is. Even after all these reveals, after all this stuff that's happening like so late in the series, we are still left wondering with like so many questions and so many just open-ended things that still have to get wrapped up, and I'm sure they will be very soon. It does honestly seem like we're approaching like the end of the series, and I don't mean like in a couple chapters or anything, but like we're getting like full circle character arcs from characters like Tank Top Master, Amai Mask, Super Alloy Darkshine. All the Mad Cyborg seems like it's finally coming full circle. Like we have a lot going on right now. And I definitely want to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments below. Also, the One Punch Man manga is finally back. We just got a chapter today, which, you know, I'm going to make another video covering that individually. Definitely let me know your guys' thoughts and opinions in the comments below, though. This does it for this one. Have an absolutely wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, whatever. Love you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.